My name is Hannah, and if you had told me 1 year ago that I would inherit $11 million and nearly die on the same day, I would have laughed in disbelief. But life has a cruel sense of irony. I remember the moment so clearly. I had just left the lawyer's office papers still fresh in my hands, heart pounding with a mix of grief and amazement. My Uncle James, the man my family barely spoke about, had passed away and left everything to me. $11 million. The number kept echoing in my head. 11 million. Enough to erase debts, buy a home, maybe even give my husband Eric the freedom to finally live out his artistic dreams. The rain had begun as a light drizzle that afternoon, streaking against my windshield while I drove down Highway 65. I had tucked a small watch box on the passenger seat, a gift for Eric. It was meant to be symbolic, a new beginning for us. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual as I rehearsed the words I would say. I imagined his face when I placed the watch in his hand and whispered the truth about our future. I thought his eyes would soften the tension that had strained. Our marriage would finally dissolve. But as I tried to picture his smile, the world shifted. Out of the corner of my eye, a semi-truck 2 lanes over began to swerve. Its tires screamed against the wet pavement. The massive trailer jackknifed with a force that seemed to split the air itself. I jerked the wheel hard to the right, but it was useless. Time slowed. The impact was deafening. Metal tore apart around me, glass shattered into 1,000 shards, and the airbag slammed against my chest. The watchbox flew open in front of me. For a split second, I saw the expensive timepiece spinning in the air as if mocking the dreams I had just formed. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, it wasn't to Eric's familiar voice or his warm hand holding mine. It was to the antiseptic sting of hospital air, the cold weight of monitors beeping in a rhythm that didn't feel like my own heartbeat. Pain exploded through every part of me. My ribs screamed with each shallow breath. My right leg felt like it was filled with fire. I tried to move, but my body betrayed me. "Easy," a nurse said, her voice soft yet firm. "You need to stay still. Stay still." As if that were possible, when I realized the man I loved most in this world was not there. Hours passed, then days. Still no sign of Eric, no call, no flowers, not even a message. I tried to believe he was overwhelmed, that maybe he didn't know how to handle the shock, but deep down, fear gnawed at me. When I finally reached him on the phone, his voice was sharp, annoyed. "I'm busy. I'll come when things calm down. No warmth, no love, just cold distance." That moment hurt worse than the crash itself. And here I am lying broken in a hospital bed, replaying the accident in my mind like a cruel film stuck on repeat. One question haunts me more than the pain, more than the fear of recovery. Why isn't my husband here? Before I go further, I need to ask you something. Where are you listening from right now? Drop it in the comments below, and if stories like this hold, you make sure to subscribe so you never miss what happens next. Because the truth is, my accident was only the beginning. What came after shattered every illusion I had about love, loyalty, and family. And as you'll see, the crash that nearly killed me wasn't the worst part of my story. I spent the first 3 nights in that sterile hospital room, convincing myself that Eric would walk through the door at any moment. I imagined the way he would brush my hair back, the way he used to whisper, "You're tougher than you know." But the door never opened. Only the steady hum of machines kept me company. Each passing hour deepened the ache in my chest, not from broken ribs, but from the emptiness of his absence. On the 4th day, I could not take it anymore. My hands shook as I reached for the phone on the tray beside me. I dialed his number again, straight to voicemail, again, straight to voicemail. Finally, I heard the tone of his voice sharp and impatient. "I'm busy, Hannah. You'll have to wait. I'll come when things calm down." Wait. I lay there with metal rods in my leg, 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and he told me to wait. His words cut deeper than any of my injuries. The man who once promised to love me through sickness and health sounded like a stranger. For the first time, a thought struck me that I had never dared to consider. Maybe Eric did not want to be here at all. I showed the text to my nurse, Sarah. She frowned, her brows knitting together. That doesn't sound right. A husband doesn't ignore his wife after an accident like this. She was right. Something was terribly wrong. I tried to eat, but every spoonful tasted like ash. I tried to sleep, but the silence of the night filled my head with darker questions. Was Eric overwhelmed, or was he relieved? And why did the word busy feel like a lie? By the end of the first week, I was desperate for answers. My friend Melanie finally picked up my call. Her voice trembled, thick with unease. Hannah, I don't know how to tell you this. Tell me what. My heart raced. It's Eric. He's been telling people that you didn't survive the crash. Her words hit me harder than the semi-truck. My mouth went dry. What are you talking about? I'm right here. I'm alive. I know, but he's been acting like he lost you. He even held a little gathering at your apartment last week, a memorial. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, my breath ragged. He told people I was dead. Yes, and Hannah, there's more. He's not alone. He's with someone. Her name's Vanessa. The room spun. My head throbbed, my chest squeezed until I could barely draw air. My husband wasn't just absent, he was already living as if I had been erased from the world. That night I stared at the ceiling for hours, watching the shadows creep along the walls. Betrayal felt worse than any physical wound. I had survived a collision that should have ended me, but the man I trusted most had buried me while I was still breathing. I did not know it then, but this was only the surface of something far darker. Eric's silence wasn't negligence, it was calculation. Every unanswered call, every ignored message, every cold word, it was all part of a plan. But I need to pause here to ask you something. Have you ever experienced a betrayal so deep it felt like you were mourning someone who was still alive? Share your story in the comments. I read them all, and your voice matters here. And if this story has already gripped, you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what comes next. Because my story was about to unravel further. The man I thought I knew, the man I had sacrificed for, was about to show me who he really was. And the truth would be more terrifying than the crash that nearly killed me. The morning after Melanie's confession, I begged her to come to the hospital. I needed to see her face, needed to confirm I had not imagined what she said on the phone. When she finally arrived, she looked nervous, her hands clutching a bouquet of flowers like a shield. She placed them on the table and sat down without meeting my eyes. Melanie, I whispered, my voice cracked from both injury and exhaustion. Tell me everything. Don't hold back. She hesitated, twisting her wedding ring around her finger, then sighed. Hannah. Eric is with her. With Vanessa. He's telling people you died in that crash. My stomach twisted as if I were falling through an endless hole. With her, who is she? She's younger, maybe mid-20s, works at a gallery. I don't know how they met, but people have seen them together, smiling, celebrating. He even introduced her as his wife. The word wife stabbed me. I pressed my hands to my chest, feeling my ribs ache beneath the bandages. He remarried? While I'm lying here in this bed? Melanie's eyes glistened with guilt. It was fast. Almost too fast. Some said they had a courthouse wedding last weekend. My breath caught. Court papers, marriage license. It all sounded unreal, like some nightmare staged to torment me. My husband had buried me alive, and in the ashes of that lie, he had built a new life with another woman. I turned my head toward the window, refusing to let Melanie see the tears that burned my eyes. Outside, the rain traced crooked lines down the glass, mirroring the fractures in my life. Why, I whispered to myself. Why would he do this? Melanie's voice dropped lower, almost ashamed. People say, he looks happy, like he's finally free. The words carved me open. Free from what? From me. From the years I worked 2 jobs to support him, to keep food on our table while he painted canvases that never sold. I had given everything to hold our marriage together. And now he had not just left me, he had erased me. Later that night, I scrolled through social media on the nurse's tablet. My fingers trembled as I searched his name. There he was, Eric. At an exclusive gallery, champagne glass in hand, Vanessa's arm looped through his. They looked radiant, like a power couple posing for a magazine cover. His caption read, New Beginnings. I dropped the tablet on my lap, my chest heaving. My pulse raced until the monitor beside me beeped in alarm. Sarah rushed in, adjusting the wires, her calm voice trying to soothe me. But I could not be soothed. The truth was seared into my heart. Eric was not coming. He had replaced me, married another woman, and celebrated while I lay broken in a hospital bed. That night I did not sleep. My mind circled the same questions again and again. Had he always planned this? Had he already been with her before the crash? Was my accident the opportunity he had been waiting for? When morning light filtered through the blinds, I was no longer the same woman who had entered the hospital after the wreck. I had lost more than my health. I had lost my marriage, my trust, my sense of safety. So, before I go further, I want to ask you this. If you discovered your partner declared you dead while you were still alive, what would you do? Leave your answer in the comments. Your stories matter. And don't forget to subscribe because the path I took next will shock you. I thought the crash was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But the real collision was just beginning, the collision between truth and betrayal. And what I discovered about Eric and Vanessa would tear open a secret buried 17 years deep. I thought the pain of betrayal had already reached its peak, but I was wrong. What I saw with my own eyes in those photos burned hotter than any wound. Eric, the man who once vowed to stand by me through every storm, was smiling beside Vanessa as though I had never existed. Their champagne flutes glistened in the gallery lights, a perfect image of a couple celebrating a bright future. My own body ached in that hospital bed, stitched and broken, while my husband celebrated new beginnings with another woman. I stared at that caption, "New Beginnings," 2 words that cut deeper than any knife. New beginnings for him meant an ending for me. I was the discarded chapter in his book, tossed aside so he could paint a different story. Sarah, my nurse, sat at the edge of my bed, her eyes scanning the photos with disbelief. "Hannah, this isn't just cruel. This is calculated. He's not just absent, he's chosen to build an entirely new life." Her words echoed what I already feared. This wasn't a mistake or a phase. This was deliberate. I spent the next hours in silence, staring at the ceiling, listening to the machines track my uneven heartbeat. I wanted to scream, but the pain in my chest kept me prisoner. I wanted to cry, but my tears had dried into something sharper, anger. How could he do this after everything I had sacrificed for him? How could he erase me so quickly? On the 5th day, I decided to confront him directly. I dialed his number again, my fingers trembling. To my surprise, he picked up. Music and laughter buzzed in the background. "Eric," I said, my voice breaking, "I'm in the hospital. I've been here for a week. Where are you?" He sighed, irritated. "I'm in the middle of something important, Hannah. More important than your wife being in critical condition." The line went silent for a moment, and then his voice hardened into something colder than I had ever heard. "I don't have time or money for a loser. Some of us are moving forward with our lives." The call ended. I stared at the phone, my entire body trembling. Loser. He had called me a loser. Me, the woman who worked double shifts so he could chase his dreams. Me, the woman who believed in him when no gallery would. And now, at my weakest moment, he had dismissed me as though I were nothing. When Sarah found me an hour later, sobbing into the thin hospital sheets, she didn't try to offer false comfort. She simply held my hand. "He's shown you who he is," she whispered. "Believe him." But belief was a bitter pill to swallow. For the next 2 days I refused food. I drifted between restless sleep and hollow wakefulness. The machines beeped, the doctors spoke, but their voices sounded distant. What was the point of surviving a crash if my life had already been destroyed? Dr. Jessica Parker, the hospital psychologist, came into my room on the 7th day. Petite, calm, but with eyes that saw through me. She didn't waste time on platitudes. "You've suffered 3 traumas at once," she explained. "The physical injuries from the crash, the emotional betrayal from your husband, and the abandonment in your darkest hour. That weight would crush anyone." Her words pierced me, but they also gave me clarity. This wasn't my weakness, it was my reality. I had been betrayed, yes, but I was still alive. My story wasn't over. And before I continue, let me ask you something important. If you were lying in a hospital bed and discovered your partner called you a burden, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story has gripped you so far, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next because the worst was yet to come. Because while Eric celebrated my supposed death, I would soon uncover the depth of his scheme. And the name Vanessa would no longer just mean betrayal, it would unlock a secret I had buried 17 years ago. The psychologist's words kept ringing in my ears. 3 traumas at once. She was right. My body had been crushed, my heart betrayed, and my soul abandoned. But I had no idea the storm was still gathering. The betrayal I had seen was only the tip of something darker, something far more deliberate. 2 days later, my attorney, Mr. Harrison, called. His voice was tense. "Hannah, I've been trying to reach you. Your husband came to my office yesterday. He claimed you had passed away in the accident. He presented papers to prove it." My blood turned cold. Papers. What kind of papers? Death certificates, marriage documents. And he wasn't alone. He brought a young woman with him, introduced her as your sister. He said she was entitled to part of the inheritance. I pressed the phone against my ear, my heart hammering. "I don't have a sister." That's what I thought Harrison said gravely. Her name was Vanessa, French surname. I didn't trust what I saw, so I stalled them. "But Hannah, they are after everything, not just pieces, everything." The truth crashed over me. Eric knew about the inheritance. He knew before I had even told him. The expensive watch and the crushed car, the celebration in the gallery, it all connected now. He had not only betrayed me as a wife, he had plotted to erase me, to take what Uncle James left me, to rebuild his world on the ruins of mine. I clenched my fists around the phone. My ribs ached, but anger gave me strength. He will not win. Not this time. That night, I stared at the ceiling, plotting. If Eric wanted to pretend I was dead, then maybe I could turn his lie against him. Sarah, my nurse, saw the fire in my eyes. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. "I'm thinking it's time to stop being the victim," I whispered. "It's time to set a trap." With her help, I crafted a plan. The first step, bait him. We borrowed Melanie's phone, and I sent Eric a message. "I know about the inheritance. Hannah is awake. She remembers everything. Fix this before she talks." His reply came within minutes. "We'll handle it today. Delete this message." My pulse quickened. He was coming. He thought he could finish what he started. But this time I would not be powerless. Sarah arranged for a discreet camera to be hidden in the room. Mr. Harrison promised to be nearby, ready with evidence. For the first time since the accident, I felt something stir in me beyond despair resolve. The hours dragged as I waited. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would look at him when he walked in. Would he smirk? Would he beg? Would he pretend again? I did not know, but I would be ready. That night alone in the dim hospital light, I thought of Uncle James. His words in the letter haunted me. "This money is a tool, not a solution. Use it well. Be happy." Remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. I realized he had left me not just a fortune, but a chance. A chance to finally see the truth about the man I married. Let me pause here and ask you something. If you discovered someone close to you was plotting to erase you for money, would you fight back or walk away? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this story has pulled you in so far, subscribe now. Because what happened when Eric stepped into my hospital room will leave you breathless. The trap was set. The lies had been woven too tightly for him to back out. And soon I would see his mask fall. But what I did not expect was that Vanessa, the woman he had married while I lay broken, would not just be part of his scheme. She would shatter my world again with one sentence: I would never forget. The morning of the confrontation felt heavier than any before. My body still ached from every movement, but it was my mind that refused to rest. I lay propped against the hospital pillows, the camera hidden in the corner, blinking faintly, recording everything. Sarah checked my IV lines, her calm hands steadying me. "Are you sure you want this today?" she asked. I nodded. I can't live in fear anymore. He thinks I'm weak. I need to show him I'm not. By noon, Mr. Harrison slipped quietly into the room carrying his briefcase. He took a seat near the window, out of sight from the door. His presence grounded me. If Eric tried to spin another web of lies, Harrison would cut through it with proof. 2 o'clock arrived. My heart monitor betrayed my nerves beeping faster as footsteps echoed down the hall. The door creaked open. Eric entered first. He looked nothing like the struggling artist I once supported. His blazer was sharp, his hair styled, and on his wrist gleamed a new watch that probably cost more than a month's rent on our old apartment. His eyes flicked to me, not with love or relief, but with irritation, quickly replaced by a mask of concern. "Hannah," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "You're awake. We've been so worried." The word lodged in my throat. From behind him stepped Vanessa, slender, stylish, her dark hair falling in waves. She lingered near the doorway, her gaze darting nervously. Eric motioned her forward. "You remember Vanessa, don't you? Your cousin's daughter." I said nothing, only watched as they moved closer. He had always been good at acting, and today he was playing the role of devoted husband. He pulled out a folder from his inner pocket. "The doctors told me you might struggle with your affairs for a while. These are just simple forms giving me temporary authority to handle things, just until you're better." I almost laughed. The audacity was staggering. Did he truly think I would sign away my life while lying in a hospital bed? I met his eyes. "You mean the $11 million I inherited?" For the first time, his composure cracked. A flicker of surprise darted across his face, quickly smothered by a smile. "Yes, of course. Such a blessing, but a heavy burden. Stress could slow your recovery. I only want to help." I wanted to scream at him, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "Is that why you blocked my accounts? Changed the locks? Told my friends I was dead?" His jaw tightened. "You're confused. The medication—" Before he could finish, Mr. Harrison stood from the shadows, his voice steady. "Or maybe she's finally seeing clearly." Eric spun around, his face blanching. "Who the hell are you?" "Harrison, her attorney. And I've seen the forged death certificates you paraded in my office." He placed a tablet on the tray, pressing play. Footage rolled of Eric and Vanessa presenting those fake documents. "Enough," Eric snapped, lunging forward, but Sarah stepped in, her voice sharp. "Touch it and hospital security will be here in seconds." In that tense silence, Vanessa finally stepped closer, her eyes fixed on me. She studied my face as though seeing a reflection she didn't understand. Then her lips trembled and her words dropped like a thunderclap. "Oh my God," she whispered, "she's my mother." The room froze, my breath caught. Eric's hand shot out, gripping her arm. "Shut up, stick to the plan." But Vanessa tore her gaze from him and looked back at me, her eyes brimming with tears. Her voice shook as she reached into her purse, pulling out a worn photograph. "I've been looking for you my entire life." She held out the image, a teenage girl cradling a newborn. Her face was younger, tear-streaked, but unmistakable. It was me. The world tilted, my heart racing. The secret I had buried 17 years ago was alive in front of me. And before I tell you what happened next, I need to ask. If someone you thought was your enemy suddenly claimed to be your child, how would you react? Drop your thoughts below and make sure to subscribe, because the truth that came after her words changed everything I thought I knew. The photograph trembled in Vanessa's hands as if it carried the weight of both our lives. My breath caught, my ribs screamed with each inhale, but I couldn't look away. The young girl in the picture, tear-streaked, frightened, was me. 17 years ago, holding a newborn I was never allowed to keep. Eric's grip on her arm tightened. "Enough, Vanessa. She's confused. Don't listen to her." But Vanessa's eyes were locked on mine, and I saw the recognition bloom there like a fire. "I've carried this photo since I was old enough to understand it," she whispered. "It was the only link to my birth mother. You. I've searched for you my whole life." The air in the room shifted. My heart monitor beeped erratically, betraying my spiraling emotions. I wanted to reach for her, to hold her, to say I never forgot, but Eric's presence loomed, poisoning the moment. I steadied my voice, forcing myself to speak despite the lump in my throat. "I was 18. My parents hid the pregnancy. They sent me to an aunt in another town. After you were born, I was allowed to hold you once before they arranged a closed adoption. I thought the picture was gone forever." Tears streaked Vanessa's cheeks. "It was given to my adoptive parents. They told me it was the only thing that came with me. They never lied about me being adopted, but I wanted to know who you were. Eric found me 3 months ago. He said you were my mother and that you wanted to reconnect. Eric's face hardened. That's not what happened, she's twisting the story. But the pieces clicked together in my mind, sickeningly clear. The memory box, the hospital bracelet, the photo. I had hidden them years ago. Somehow Eric had found them when we moved last year. He had used them to lure Vanessa into his scheme. I turned to him, my voice sharp. You knew. You used her to steal from me. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed her. Vanessa pulled away from his grasp, her eyes wide with disgust. You told me she wanted this. You told me she was too ashamed to face me. Eric sneered. Don't be naive. It was a mutually beneficial deal. You wanted a mother, I gave you one. I wanted the money, and together we could have had it all. The words stung not just for me, but for her. I saw the hope drain from Vanessa's face as she realized she had been nothing more than a pawn in his con. Mr. Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. Eric, we have you on record for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. Do you want to add exploitation of a minor to the list? Eric's mask cracked. He slammed his hand on the tray beside my bed, rattling the water glass. You think you've won? This isn't over. Hospital security stepped forward from the hall, summoned by Sarah's earlier warning. But before they moved in, Vanessa whispered something that silenced us all. I don't want your money, she said, her eyes on me. I just wanted my mother. Her words pierced me. My throat tightened as 17 years of guilt, shame, and longing crashed over me. For the first time since the accident, I didn't feel broken. I felt raw, alive, and seen. Eric tried to recover his voice, slick with manipulation. Vanessa, think about what we've planned. Don't throw it away now. She turned on him, her voice shaking but resolute. You used me. You never cared about me or her. I'm done. And now I need to ask you something. If you discovered the person you trusted most was only using you as a pawn, would you walk away or fight back? Tell me in the comments. And if you want to hear how this confrontation exploded, make sure you subscribe, because the moment Eric's mask truly shattered, everything changed. The lies had unraveled. The truth about my daughter stood in front of me, and the man I once called my husband was about to lose the only power he thought he had left. The room was suffocatingly silent after Vanessa's declaration. My chest rose and fell, with ragged breaths, the monitor beside me beeping out of rhythm. Eric's mask of control cracked further with every second of silence. But Vanessa stood her ground, her fingers still clutching that photograph like a lifeline. I forced myself upright despite the stabbing pain in my ribs. My eyes met hers. For 17 years I had buried the memory of that night, the night I gave her up, the night my parents told me I had no choice. And now, the child I once held for a single trembling hour was in front of me. I never stopped thinking about you, I whispered, my voice raw. Not one day passed where I didn't wonder who you had become. Her lips trembled. Then why didn't you find me? Tears stung my eyes. Because I thought you deserved better. I was 18, scared, with no money and no support. My parents told me adoption was the only way to give you a chance at life. I believed them, but it broke me. Eric scoffed, stepping forward, his blazer brushing against the bed rail. Touching, but irrelevant. She's here now, and with her the money stays in the family. All we need is your signature. He tapped the papers on the tray, his voice firm, commanding. Vanessa flinched back, staring at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. You knew all along, and you still lied to me. He sneered, his voice dropping low. I gave you what you wanted. A mother. Don't act like you're innocent in this. Her hand shook, but her voice didn't. I never wanted money. I wanted the truth. You used me. The security camera hidden in the corner captured every word. Harrison leaned forward, his voice like a blade. Eric, you've just admitted to fraud, coercion, and deception. Do you really want to keep digging? Eric's eyes flicked toward the door, calculating, desperate, but Sarah stepped in, her hand raised. Try to leave and security will drag you out. You're cornered. The tension snapped like a wire. Eric slammed his fist on the bed frame, the noise sharp in the stillness. You think you can outplay me? I've survived worse than this. But Vanessa didn't flinch. She pulled the photo tighter to her chest and looked at me with tears glistening in her eyes. I don't care about his lies. I just want to know if you're really my mother. I reached out my hand, trembling, every muscle in my body screaming from the effort. When my fingers brushed hers, a lifetime of silence shattered. Yes, I breathed. I am. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Eric's face twisted in fury. This is ridiculous. She's confused, manipulated. None of this matters. But it did matter. It mattered more than the inheritance, more than the betrayal, more than anything Eric could threaten. In that moment, I realized he had no power left. Because the truth, the bond between mother and daughter, was stronger than his lies. Vanessa collapsed into the chair beside me, clutching my hand. 17 years, she whispered. I thought you didn't want me. I wanted you so much it broke me to let you go, I said, my voice shaking. And I will spend the rest of my life proving it. Eric lunged forward again, but Harrison snapped the tablet shut. That's enough. Every word has been recorded. Every lie. Every threat. You're finished. Before I reveal what happened next, let me ask you something. If a secret you buried for half your life suddenly came back in the form of a child, how would you face it? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe, because the twist that came after this moment shattered not only Eric's plan, but also everything I thought I knew about myself. The mask was off, the lies exposed, but the confrontation wasn't over. Because Eric wasn't done fighting, and the next move he made would force us all to the breaking point. Eric's face twisted as if the ground had slipped from under him. The carefully rehearsed role of the grieving husband was gone. In its place was raw anger, ugly and desperate. He pointed a finger at Vanessa, his voice rising. You don't understand what's at stake here. Without me, you're nothing. Without me, you'll never have access to what's rightfully yours. Vanessa recoiled, but she didn't let go of my hand. Her voice cracked, but her resolve was clear. I don't want the money, Eric. I never wanted the money. I just wanted the truth. I squeezed her hand, my ribs aching, but my voice steady. And now you have it. The truth. You have me. For a moment, the room felt suspended between two worlds, the family I had found, and the man who wanted to erase it. Mr. Harrison leaned forward, calm but firm. Eric, you've already crossed into criminal territory. Fraud, forgery, bigamy. Every second you stay here makes it worse. But Eric only laughed bitterly. Crimes. Do you think the police will care? Money talks louder than the truth, and with $11 million I can make anything disappear. His arrogance was suffocating, yet beneath his bravado I saw the flicker of fear. He knew his plan was collapsing. He knew we had him cornered. Still he refused to surrender. Sarah stepped closer, her arms folded. Hospital security is outside. One word from me and you'll be dragged out in cuffs. Eric glared at her, then back at me. His voice dropped into a hiss. Don't think this is over, Hannah. You owe me. Everything I gave up for you, everything I sacrificed, it was all for us. And this is how you repay me. I couldn't hold back anymore. My voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. You sacrificed nothing. I was the one working nights, paying bills, carrying us both while you chased empty dreams. You didn't love me. You loved what I gave you. And when I couldn't give any more, you threw me away. Vanessa's voice joined mine, trembling but fierce. And you used me, lied to me, pretended to care about finding my mother when all you wanted was her money. You don't deserve either of us. For the first time, Eric looked cornered. His eyes darted toward the door as though calculating an escape. Harrison stood. You've run out of options. Everything you've said here has been recorded. You're finished. Eric clenched his fists, his chest heaving. For a terrifying second, I thought he might lunge at me. My heart monitor spiked. Sarah tensed, ready to call security. But then he froze, his jaw, tight eyes burning into me. This isn't the end, he spat, turning abruptly toward the door. You'll regret this. 2 security officers stepped into the room before he could move another inch. Their presence filled the doorway, blocking his exit. Eric sneered, but his confidence faltered. He looked back one last time, his expression a storm of rage and desperation. Then the guards closed in around him. The door shut, leaving only the echo of his threat behind. I exhaled, my body trembling, the beeping monitor finally slowing. Vanessa's hand was still wrapped around mine, her eyes red, but unbroken. You don't ever have to face him alone again, she whispered. For the first time in weeks, I believed it. And before I tell you how that moment changed everything, let me leave you with this. What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be your greatest enemy? Comment below and make sure to subscribe, because what came after this confrontation wasn't just about betrayal. It was about uncovering a secret so deep it would change the course of my life forever. The confrontation was over, but the war wasn't finished. Because Eric's downfall had unlocked something even bigger, the truth about the inheritance, the will, and the bond between mother and daughter that no money could ever replace. The silence after Eric's removal was almost louder than his threats. I sat there trembling, every nerve in my body buzzing with adrenaline. My ribs ached, my leg throbbed, but none of it compared to the storm in my chest. For the first time since the crash, the danger wasn't on the highway. It had been sitting across from me in human form. Vanessa sat on the edge of my bed, her eyes glassy, the photograph still clutched in her hand. "I don't understand," she whispered. "How could he fool me like that? How could I believe him?" Her voice broke something inside me. I reached for her hand, ignoring the pain that shot through my side. "Because you wanted to believe Vanessa. You wanted love. You wanted answers. He knew that, and he used it." She shook her head, tears spilling. "I feel so stupid." I squeezed her hand tighter. "No, don't you dare blame yourself. He's a predator. You were his target. That's on him, not you." Mr. Harrison stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "Vanessa, you need to understand Eric's plan was elaborate, but it wasn't flawless. We have recordings, documents, and witnesses. He can't escape this." Her shoulders sagged with relief, but her eyes flicked back to me. "And us. What happens now? You're my mother, but we don't know each other. 17 years is a long time." The words cut deep because she was right. A lifetime had stretched between us. "Then we start small," I said softly. "One day at a time, if you'll let me." For a moment, the bitterness in the room softened, replaced by something fragile but real. But Harrison wasn't finished. He pulled a folder from his briefcase, setting it gently on my lap. "Hannah, there's something else you need to see. James's will has a clause. If you had died without children, part of the estate would have gone to charity. But with a direct descendant..." He looked meaningfully at Vanessa. "Everything remains in the family." The realization slammed into me. That's why Eric needed her. If I was gone, Vanessa would inherit it all, and as her husband, he'd control it. Vanessa's face went pale, so I wasn't just a pawn. I was the key. Her voice cracked with disgust, and she buried her face in her hands. I pulled her into a shaky embrace. My body protested, but my soul needed it. "Listen to me. He may have used you, but he doesn't define you. You're not his pawn. You're my daughter." She sobbed against my shoulder, and for the first time in weeks, I let my own tears fall freely. Eric's schemes had nearly destroyed me, but in exposing them, he had also exposed a truth I never thought I'd hold in my hands again. My daughter, flesh of my flesh. Harrison cleared his throat gently. "We'll move forward with charges. Fraud, forgery, bigamy, attempted grand theft. He's looking at serious prison time. But Hannah, you need to be prepared. He won't stop trying. He may still have allies. Stay vigilant." I nodded, wiping my tears. The fight wasn't over, but I wasn't alone anymore. And before I continue, let me ask you this. If someone you loved revealed a hidden child from their past, would it change how you saw them? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your truth. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happened after this moment forced me to make the hardest choice of my life. Eric was gone for now, but his shadow lingered. And as I looked at Vanessa, I knew my next steps weren't just about survival. They were about rebuilding, protecting, and finally choosing family over fear. The following days blurred together in a haze of police interviews, legal paperwork, and restless nights. Hospital security kept Eric away, but his voice still echoed in my head. This isn't over. Even behind bars, his threat lingered like smoke after a fire. Detective Jennings visited my room, her presence calm but firm. She placed a sealed evidence bag on my tray. Inside was a small prescription bottle with my name printed neatly on the label. But it wasn't a medication I had ever taken. "These were filled 3 days before your crash," she explained. "Powerful sedatives usually prescribed for severe insomnia. Did you request these?" I shook my head, my stomach turning. "No, I've never needed sleeping pills." Her jaw tightened. "We believe Eric may have been slipping them into your drinks. Neighbors reported seeing you unusually disoriented in the weeks before the accident. The truth chilled me to the bone. He hadn't just abandoned me. He may have been preparing to erase me long before the truck hit. Was the crash fate or part of his plan? I would never know for certain, but the thought made me nauseous. Mr. Harrison returned the next morning, his tone clipped but reassuring. The evidence against him is overwhelming. Fraud, forgery, attempted theft, and now possible poisoning. He won't talk his way out of this. But even as the case built itself around Eric's downfall, my gaze kept drifting to Vanessa. She sat beside my bed most days, quiet, almost timid. Sometimes she asked questions about my childhood, my favorite books, the music I used to love. Other times she simply held my hand as though afraid I might vanish if she let go. One afternoon she whispered, "I don't know how to be your daughter." I turned my head to face her, my throat tightening. "And I don't know how to be your mother. But we don't have to know right now. We just have to try." Her smile was small, tentative, but real. In that fragile moment, I felt something Eric could never understand: hope. Still nights were the hardest. I woke often in cold sweats, haunted by memories of shattered glass and Eric's words. The betrayal replayed like a cruel loop. I would close my eyes, and instead of relief, I saw him smirking in that gallery, Vanessa on his arm, champagne raised high. But then I would glance at the chair beside me, where my daughter often dozed off with the photograph clutched in her hand, and I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Sarah, my nurse, leaned in one evening after adjusting my IV. "He wanted to destroy you, Hannah, but look, you survived the crash, you exposed him, and you gained something he never expected." She was right. Out of the wreckage of betrayal, I had found my daughter. Now let me ask you something. If you uncovered proof that someone you trusted was secretly trying to harm you, would you forgive, or would you fight until justice was served? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe. The next part of my story reveals how Eric's final downfall became the beginning of a new chapter I never imagined. Because while Eric's world was collapsing, mine was slowly being rebuilt, not with money, but with a bond stronger than any fortune could buy. The day Eric was officially charged felt like breathing after weeks underwater. Fraud, forgery, bigamy, attempted theft, and possibly poisoning his crimes were stacked high enough to crush the mask he had worn for years. But instead of feeling triumph, I felt a strange emptiness. The man I once loved was gone, and in his place stood a criminal who had nearly destroyed me. Vanessa sat with me during the court updates, her eyes flicking between the lawyer's notes and my face. She seemed as shaken as I was, though, for different reasons. "I don't know how to process this," she admitted quietly. "For months he told me he was helping me find my mother, and the whole time he was building a trap for both of us." Her voice cracked and guilt clawed at me. "None of this is your fault," I told her firmly. "Eric preyed on both of us. He twisted your hope into leverage, just like he twisted my love into chains. But we're free of him now." She nodded, but her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I thought I was starting a new life with him, and instead, I was walking straight into a nightmare. I reached for her hand. "You've been through hell, Vanessa, but you're stronger than you think, and you're not alone anymore." For a long moment, we just sat in silence, holding on to each other. For 17 years, that connection had been severed. Now it was fragile, tentative, but real. Later that evening, Sarah wheeled in a tray of food I could barely stomach. She gave me that pointed look only nurses can give. "You're healing, but you need more than rest. You need a reason to fight." And sometimes she glanced at Vanessa family as the best reason. Her words sank deep. Maybe this was my reason to keep going to rebuild. Not because of the money or revenge, but because of the daughter I never thought I'd see again. But even as I embraced this fragile hope, Harrison warned me there was still danger. Eric isn't done. Men like him rarely surrender. He will twist, manipulate, and fight until the last second. Be prepared. And he was right. The next court date revealed just how far Eric had been willing to go. Harrison presented falsified emails, fake contracts, and even forged letters Eric had created to make it appear as though I had entrusted him with my inheritance. He had been preparing this scheme long before my accident, planting evidence to rewrite history in his favor. Hearing it laid out in the sterile courtroom chilled me. It wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditation. He hadn't stumbled into greed. He had built his future on erasing me. When we left the courtroom, Vanessa walked beside me, her steps slow, her shoulders heavy. Finally, she said, "All my life I imagined finding you, but not like this. Not in the middle of lies and courtrooms." I stopped, resting my hand on hers. "Sometimes the truth comes in storms, Vanessa. But storms wash the world clean. They make room for something new." Her eyes searched mine, and for the first time she smiled. Not the uncertain, shaky smile of a girl lost, but the beginning of something stronger. Before I reveal what came after this turning point, let me ask you. If you discovered someone you trusted had staged years of lies just to control your future, would you confront them or walk away forever? Tell me below, and if you're still with me in this journey, subscribe now, because the twist that came after this moment tested both me and Vanessa in ways we never imagined. Because Eric's lies were finally collapsing, but what came next wasn't just about him. It was about us, mother and daughter, choosing what kind of family we wanted to become. After weeks of hearings, endless paperwork, and too many sleepless nights, I finally left the hospital. My body was frail, my leg still wrapped in braces, but I was alive and free. Yet the question remained, where would I go? My old apartment was poisoned with Eric's lies. The locks changed the walls, tainted with memories I could never scrub clean. Vanessa was the one who broke the silence as we sat together by the hospital window. "You could come with me?" she offered, her voice timid but hopeful. "My place isn't big, but it has an elevator, and I'd like the chance to know you." I hesitated, touched but wary of becoming a burden. "You're young, Vanessa. You shouldn't have to nurse me back to health." She leaned forward, her eyes steady. "I'm not offering out of obligation. I want this. We lost 17 years. I don't want to lose another day." Her words pierced through my hesitation, but it was Sarah, my nurse, who suggested something that shifted everything. "What about your uncle's estate? The countryside property is sitting empty. It could be a fresh start for both of you." The thought rooted itself in me like a seed. The sprawling Victorian home where I'd once wandered as a child, now mine. It would need work, yes, but it carried no ghosts of Eric, no shadows of betrayal. Just space to breathe, to heal, and maybe to build a new kind of family. When I told Vanessa, her eyes lit up with cautious excitement. "It's far from the city, but maybe distance is exactly what we need." A week later, she drove me there. Snow dusted the fields as the estate came into view. The house rose from the landscape like something out of a dream, wide porches, tall windows, and the weight of history in its walls. I had seen it as a child through Uncle James's eyes, but standing there, now battered, yet unbroken, it felt like it belonged to me for the first time. We moved in slowly, our lives colliding in small but meaningful ways. Vanessa sang in the mornings while making coffee, filling the quiet halls with life. I discovered she had my stubborn streak, the same furrow in her brow when she concentrated. She learned that I could not function without silence until my second cup of coffee. At first we circled each other carefully, testing the waters of a bond neither of us knew how to navigate. But each small ritual, shared meals, movie nights, on the old couch, walking slowly along the frost-kissed property as my strength returned, stitched something back together. Physical therapy sessions became victories we celebrated. From wheelchair to walker, then to crutches, every milestone was marked with Vanessa cheering like I'd won an Olympic medal. Sometimes she'd bring cupcakes from the local bakery as if to say, "See, we're building something sweet again." But the emotional healing was harder. Nights were still heavy with nightmares. I woke sometimes gasping, haunted by Eric's sneer, by the memory of shattered glass. And yet instead of facing the darkness alone, I'd find Vanessa sitting with me, her presence steady, her hand warm over mine. "This house is too big for just two people," she said one evening as we stood by the porch watching the sun set. "But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it means there's space to grow." Her words struck me. She wasn't just talking about the house, she was talking about us. And before I tell you how our life in that estate transformed everything, let me ask you. If life gave you a second chance to rebuild family from broken pieces, would you take it or walk away, afraid of more pain? Share your answer below. And if you want to walk with me through this new chapter, Subscribe now, because what happened next showed me that even betrayal can bloom into something extraordinary. The house wasn't just a place to heal my body. It became the soil where the roots of a new family began to grow messy, imperfect, but ours. The estate slowly became more than just walls and windows, it became a sanctuary. Each creak of the old floors, each draft through the tall windows, reminded me that this house carried history, but it was ready to hold new beginnings. Vanessa and I began settling into rhythms that felt almost normal. Breakfast together, therapy visits, evenings spent watching the fire crackle in the hearth. For the first time in months, life didn't feel like survival. It felt like healing. Still, Eric's shadow loomed. The legal battle pressed forward, each court date peeling back more layers of his deception. Mr. Harrison visited often, updating me on his downfall. "He's looking at serious time," he said, during one meeting, flipping through files. Fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, bigamy, and possible conspiracy to commit harm. The evidence is airtight. I wanted to feel satisfaction, but instead, I felt weary. Eric had stolen years of my life, love I could never reclaim. Seeing him in that courtroom hunched in an orange jumpsuit, I didn't feel revenge. I felt relief that the nightmare was finally closing. Vanessa accompanied me to one of the hearings. She sat beside me, her hand gripping mine as Eric was led into the courtroom, his face pale, stripped of the arrogance he once wore like armor. His eyes searched for me, but I didn't flinch. For 7 years, I had been blind to who he really was. Not anymore. "Do you still love him?" Vanessa whispered as we waited for the judge. I shook my head steady. No. I mourn the person I thought he was, but that man never existed. Eric was just a character he created like one of his paintings. Beautiful on the surface, hollow underneath. Her eyes softened. "You're stronger than I thought I'd be if I were you." Maybe, but strength, I realized, wasn't about never breaking. It was about surviving the breaks, then choosing to rebuild anyway. Back at the estate, life blossomed. Vanessa, inspired by everything she had endured, enrolled in psychology classes. She dreamed of helping other adoptees and birth parents navigate reunions. Watching her take those steps filled me with pride. Out of the ashes of betrayal, she was forging a purpose of her own. As for me, I decided to honor Uncle James's legacy in a way that felt true. With Harrison's help, I established a charitable foundation in his name, dedicated to supporting young single mothers and promoting ethical adoption practices. The irony was not lost on me. What had once been my greatest wound could now become a lifeline for others. We began planting a garden together, the two of us, turning over soil, laying down roots. It felt symbolic, each seed a promise that something beautiful could grow from broken ground. Vanessa would laugh as we worked, her hair falling into her face, her hands stained with dirt. And I found myself smiling more than I had in years. But the scars remained. Some nights I still woke in a sweat heart, racing with memories of shattered glass and Eric's cold voice. Yet when I looked across the hall and saw Vanessa asleep in her room, the fear faded. Because I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Detective Jennings visited again before the final sentencing. She confirmed what I already suspected: Eric's time was over. 8 years behind bars. It wasn't enough to erase what he had done, but it was enough to protect us. Standing outside the courthouse that day, I inhaled the crisp air, letting it fill my lungs. Vanessa slipped her arm through mine. "It's over," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied, "but it's also just beginning." And now I want to ask you, if you had the chance to turn your deepest wound into a mission that helped others, would you take it or let the pain define you? Tell me below, and if this journey has touched you, subscribe now, because the way my story ends might change how you see your own. Justice had been served, but justice wasn't the end. Healing, love, and the fragile bond of a new family, that was where the real story began. 1 year after the crash, the estate looked nothing like the empty house I had first entered. The halls echoed with laughter, the kitchen smelled of Sunday dinners, and the garden we planted together bloomed wildly in the spring sun. It wasn't just a house anymore, it was home. That day I gathered everyone who had carried me through the darkness. Sarah, who had stayed by my side in the hospital when no one else did. Dr. Jessica, the psychologist who gave me the words to understand my pain. Detective Jennings, who fought for justice when I didn't have the strength. Mr. Harrison, who shielded me legally when Eric tried to strip me of everything. And of course, Vanessa with her adoptive parents, Diana and Mark, whose kindness and generosity humbled me. We sat around a long wooden table in the dining room. Light streamed in through the tall windows, illuminating faces that represented survival, truth, and new beginnings. Raising my glass, I said, "To unexpected journeys, and to the people who help us survive them." As the words left my mouth, I realized how true they were. I had lost a husband, but I had gained a daughter. I had lost illusions, but I had gained clarity. I had lost my old life, but in its place, I found one infinitely more real and satisfying. Later that evening, after everyone left, Vanessa and I sat on the porch steps, the stars above us glittering like 1,000 tiny lanterns. She leaned against me, her voice soft. "Do you ever regret it? Not just the adoption, but everything after the crash. Eric, the betrayal." I thought for a long moment. Regret means I'd choose differently if I could, and I wouldn't. Because if none of this had happened, I might never have found you again. Sometimes the worst things in life clear the path for the best things. She smiled through tears. "You sound like one of my professors." I laughed, but her words sank deep. Maybe pain really does carry wisdom if we're willing to listen. The inheritance no longer felt like a weight. It became a tool, just as Uncle James had written in his final letter. Together, Vanessa and I used part of it to fund scholarships for young single mothers, to support ethical adoption practices, to build something good out of the ashes of betrayal. It was a way of honoring him and of healing both of us. Still, scars remain. Sometimes I wake in the night hearing the echo of Eric's voice, feeling again the coldness of his betrayal. But then I remember his downfall. I remember the look on Vanessa's face when she chose truth over lies. And I know I am no longer defined by what he did. I am defined by what I chose after. As the stars glittered overhead, Vanessa asked, "What are you thinking about?" I looked at her, my daughter, the proof that even broken stories can be rewritten. That sometimes, I said, you have to survive a crash to finally find your way home. And before I close this chapter, I want to leave you with a thought. Have you ever faced a betrayal so deep that it forced you to rebuild from nothing, only to discover that what you built was stronger than what you lost? Share your story in the comments, and if mine has touched you, subscribe now, because stories of resilience and second chances can remind us all that even our darkest nights can lead to dawn. The road here was paved with shattered glass and heartbreak, but in the end, I found my freedom. I found my daughter. And I found that true wealth has nothing to do with millions in the bank. It's the people who stand with you when everything else falls away. When I look back now, it feels like two different lives. The first was full of illusions, working endless hours to keep a marriage afloat, believing loyalty would one day be rewarded, convincing myself that sacrifice was the same as love. That life ended on a rain-slick highway with shattered glass and twisted steel. The second life began in a hospital bed, surrounded not by the person I thought I could depend on, but by strangers who became my lifeline. Nurses who held my hand, a psychologist who gave me words to breathe again, a lawyer who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. And in the middle of it all, the daughter I thought I had lost forever, returning to me not as a child, but as a young woman searching for truth. Eric's betrayal was devastating, but it was also revealing. It stripped away the mask I had been living under for years. Money didn't corrupt him. It simply revealed who he had been all along. And though his choices left scars, they also forced me to see what mattered most. Now, when I walk through the halls of Uncle James's estate, I no longer feel like a guest. I feel like its keeper, carrying forward his legacy in a way that honors both him and the future Vanessa and I are building. The garden blooms brighter each season, not just with flowers, but with proof that healing is possible. Life is quieter now, but richer. Every shared laugh with my daughter, every dinner with her adoptive parents, every plan for the future reminds me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about piecing yourself back together even stronger, even clearer. And in that clarity, I've learned this sometimes, our most painful crashes don't destroy us. They redirect us home.